I'm excited to be here. This is my first time at the conference, and to be honest, the content and the people that I've met so far has been truly spectacular. I'm going to share with you today some of my thoughts and ideas on values, principles, and things like that that I think make us more effective leaders within our organization. I'm a firm believer that marketing and communications talent is in short supply. It's in high demand. And the reality is that the more people here that move up and move on to become CEOs, CFOs, CIOs, I think only gives more credibility to the function. And the reality is for us to do that, we have to be change agents within the organization. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the principles and values of how I see that happening, and hopefully you'll have a chance to hear from you as well. Before I get into NASDAQ, I want to share a brief story of a previous company I worked at, which you may have heard of as well. It became renowned, but the reality was that I worked for the largest commodities broker in the world, 225-year history, and the company went public, and 5 years later was bankrupt. And during that 5 years as a public company, it had 2 chairmen, 3 CEOs, 4 CFOs, 4 COOs, and was in a constant flux of change. And I think we can all appreciate that change is ever constant in what we do. But also on the marketing side, before the company went public, it had 17 brands, 276 websites, no marketing or communications infrastructure per se. And at 2 weeks after the company filed for bankruptcy, it was listed on Fortune's Most Admired as an up-and-comer because over that 5-year period, it went from that fragmented offering to 1 brand, 11 regional websites, 30 marketers and communicators in 13 countries, and a sizable budget to build that brand. And so we all face challenges and we all face constant change. And I will tell you the 3 things that came out of that experience for me as a marketer were what I like to call the 3 V's: vision, voice, and visibility. And you need all 3 of those. Vision, you have to have a vision. I don't care if you work on a 1-person team, a 100-person team, you're trying to move the organization in a key direction. You have to have a vision of where you want that organization, that team, that function to go. Voice. I happened to watch over the weekend Our Brand is Crisis, and I'm not sure if anybody's had a chance to see that, but there's this moment in the movie where Sandra Bullock says, you know, our brand is crisis, that's what we're selling. And at that moment, her team galvanizes around this concept of we've identified the problem, in this case in Bolivia, and we are the solution to it. And to me, that's part of finding your voice. You got to find your voice. What do you stand for? What are you selling within the organization? What is your organization selling? Because it's not just products and services, it's a solution to a significant problem. And then visibility. You need it. Your team needs it. Your company needs it. Your products and services need it. And I heard someone say this in a previous session. Our job is the right message at the right time in the right place. And that is what we are supposed to do. And so those 3 V's I think you'll see has kind of guided my view of the challenges and how to tackle them. Let's see here. Okay. So 3 years ago, I walked into NASDAQ, and we faced a few challenges at that moment as well. It was on the heels of a very large IPO of a social media company that didn't go so well. We had an employee workforce that was completely disengaged. We were facing valuation challenges in the form of all of the investment community viewed us as a U.S. equities company. And I could take a poll in this room and ask anybody how much of NASDAQ's revenue comes from U.S. equities, and even if you were to ask portfolio managers, they would tell you 50, 60, 70%. So the reality is 10%. So 10% of our revenue was driving our multiple in the investment community, and therefore we traded at 9 times earnings, which was at that point about a 40% discount to the S&P. On the marketing side, obviously, we had certain challenges of fragmentation of the digital channels, lack of lead gen sophistication, skill set gaps, communications and marketing and digital and design, not talking to one another, getting on the same page. But the biggest challenge we faced was this disconnect in who we are and what we did. As you saw, everybody in this room knows NASDAQ. We are on the news every single day. But how many people truly know what it is we do? That 10% of the revenue was driving all of the perceptions of NASDAQ, both positive and negative. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we address these challenges, the sequencing of addressing these challenges, and some of the lessons that I took away from that. And I look forward to hearing from you as well. First and foremost, we had to focus on the internal audience. We were adamant that we could go out and spend millions of dollars on an advertising campaign to solve the reputational issue. But if we didn't have 4,000 people within the organization that understood who we are, what we were trying to do, what we were solving for, I remember the first 2 town halls, we'd get questions over and over again. Are we an exchange? Are we a technology company? And the survey results on some of the internal survey work we were doing was showing a level of disengagement. So we developed a plan. This wasn't a widely marketed plan, but it was something that we socialized on a regular basis. And this isn't rocket science. This is internal focus groups, external client research. It's all the traditional things that you'd go through to start rebuilding after an event. We developed new mission, vision, and values for the organization, a new internal campaign all around lead, exceed, and thrive to talk about what we expected from our employees and what we would in turn do for them. But the reality is that the 2 most important things on this are the two at the bottom. There was a constant socialization of where we were going and what we were trying to accomplish with the leadership team. Every opportunity, every meeting, every opportunity we had to say, this is what we're trying to get done. And we would try and pick up the pieces on the talent side where we could to make enhancements, make key hires as we were going down this path. Here's a video that aired early in this process. You guys got the sound?
For businesses, for industries, for the world. We make leaders out of people and careers out of jobs. We make technologies and solutions that make global capital markets more efficient and connected. We make relationships stronger, more stable, built on trust so they bend but never break. We make differences in markets by making countries' economies stronger and companies' dreams possible. We make things, each and every day. This is who we are, and this is what we do.
Now, what you saw there was an external manifestation of what started as an internal video to get our employees aligned around where we're going, what we're trying to do, and to show them, those were all employees, the value that we place in them and that they are part of this journey and an essential part of this journey. The results just this year, we had a 40% increase in town hall participation, and 74% of employees feel that they have a better understanding of our strategy, our business, and our offerings. And so it's been 3 years, but those numbers have steadily ticked up over over the course of every year. This is a hard one for me because, as I'm sure like everybody in this room, you want things done a certain way and you have expectations of your teams or your coworkers and things of that nature, and things don't always go the way you would like. Yeah, I had to recognize that I couldn't fix everything, at least I couldn't fix everything at once. I had to prioritize. And as part of that prioritization activity, we collectively, as change agents, have to understand what the organization values. And in this case in particular, was so difficult to go in and talk to a leadership team or a CEO and say, our social isn't where it needs to be. Our content isn't where it needs to be. Our lead generation process is broken. If he is facing, or she is facing, or the team is facing reputational events on a regular basis. And so it's hard to get your agenda moving if you're not solving the biggest pain points in the organization. And at this particular time, it was public relations. It was broken, our relationships with the media weren't where they were supposed to be, and it needed addressing. And that's where we dove into first. And so there were other things, as you see some of the other challenges listed in there, that we all knew were big issues that we had to solve for. But until we got this addressed, it was going to be exceptionally difficult to advance our agenda. So what did we do? We started new levels of engagement, new levels of transparency. We built relationships. We talked about issues. We built thought leadership platforms and all of these things to begin to showcase that not only was NASDAQ very different than just a US equities company, but we were exceptionally engaged in the relationships that were very important to us. So this is another one of my favorites, is there are moments in my mind in every organization where a big idea can be embraced. And finding those moments and seizing them, capturing them for your agenda to move the organization forward in a positive direction is critical. Knowing when those moments exist and seizing them, I feel like is all of our jobs in this room. And it's one of the funnest things we get to do. So when I joined NASDAQ, this was the visual identity. It had stood for almost 5 decades. There was a tremendous amount of passion within the organization about it. And the OMX was part of an acquisition, and we'd get questions all the time about what that truly meant. But in the client research, what we found were that some of the things that we associated ourselves as differentiating, global technology, global footprint, things of that nature that we had emphasized over and over and over again, weren't the things that were driving choice among our clients. It was the individuals. It was the service offering. It were some of the softer things that NASDAQ necessarily hadn't been known for. And that's why you saw in that video of us putting our people first. So we went down a new path with agreement from management to something new, something more approachable, something that symbolized a bond with our clients, something that symbolized a performance-driven culture. And what we also put with it were tech, trade, intel list, just to get people to say, okay, maybe there is something here. Our technology runs 80 exchanges all around the world. We have our trading business, 2/3 of it comes from things that aren't US equities. Intelligence, we sell corporate solutions products to PR heads, IR heads, CMOs, boards of directors. And then obviously our listings business with which our brand is most associated with. But we took that a step further and also defined a common attribute that was core to NASDAQ's culture, but also something we shared with our clients. Ambition is what all visionaries, innovators, leaders, and their companies have in common. It fuels their success and empowers them to achieve what others say can't be done. When you're ambitious, you want to be surrounded by like-minded individuals. For those who call NASDAQ their home, it is the place to ignite their ambitions. And igniting their ambitions was our way of saying we see ourselves as a catalyst to our clients' success. We want to help fuel their ambitions, drive their growth. It was very much a client-focused theme. And what I'd like to do is play, I think, a brief video that captures this. When this campaign rolled out, we can go through all the metrics and details, and we had a microsite and television and all this great stuff, and it was really fantastic. But I think this video kind of captures directionally where we were trying to go with things.
We get the opportunity to meet really the young, dynamic companies that come to market. These companies really have great ambitions, and that cannot help but influence how we think and how we approach things. They've served as an inspiration for many of the practices we developed here at NASDAQ. It's important to recognize that we operate in 22 markets, we have 10 clearinghouses, and we're a global organization. But more importantly, we have 4 major business segments, and each of those business segments really competes in its own separate ecosystem. When we go to a developing market, we give the opportunity to fast forward the capital market progress in their particular country. So it's the ability for them to go from point 0 to point 8 in a very rapid fashion. Our corporate solutions business has over 10,000 customers, ranging from services such as a director's desk product, shareholder surveillance, and then clearly our listing business is where our brand is most closely identified, and that's an important segment to us. We here in America have this thought of the great entrepreneur in their garage, and that's how they invent the future. It's important to recognize you can only get so many employees in that one garage, and 92% of employee growth happens after they raise money on a public market. So we have to be there to make sure capital and innovative concepts can come together. So between that deep customer knowledge and understanding how technology will change, that will then fuel our ambition.
What we had inside NASDAQ were some core assets that probably weren't being leveraged to the extent that they could. And when we talk about innovation, this was a place where it was safe to innovate. We were doing well, but could only do better. We have a tremendous amount of content that comes through all of those businesses I just rattled off. It's about $2.1 billion in revenue, and great minds producing quality content. Really basic. There was no central repository to curate all this content. There was no way for a client to search it. We created what we dubbed our Market Insight blog. This is a searchable by our businesses, by your client problem, all of those things. And what happened? Amazing. Today, 80% of our website traffic comes through Market Insight. There's been a 60% increase in views of that page in the last year, and it went in 12 months to a top 5 page within our website. That content has delivered $10 million in revenue to the firm, created a $30 million pipeline, and it's just something that as a team we're exceptionally proud of that we've been able to harness. Social. There is an amazing amount of interest in NASDAQ, what's happening at the market site in Times Square, who's ringing the bell. We probably had, and I don't know the exact number, but easily close to 50 different social handles across all mediums, and I would say we were only focused on maybe 2 social channels. We have today over 1.5 million followers across our social channels. We are doing things that no other exchange and, in fact, financial services company, I think, are probably doing. We were the first to engage the investment and trading community on Twitter during market events. We were the first to periscope a bell ceremony. We were first to do live polling in Times Square. We were first to do celebrity takeovers of our Instagram channel. Run leading photographers on our Instagram channel. We have our own Social Bell, which is a video blog of leading companies and what they're doing on social. This was a safe place to take risks, to innovate, to experiment as we were solving all those other things. And I think the rough number is about, in the last 2 years, we've had about a 325% growth of social following in the last 2 years. As I mentioned, we're at the center of the markets. We've invested multi-million dollars in reshaping the experience at Times Square, at our market site in Times Square. Here you can see Etsy in the Times Square takeover, T-Mobile in the lower right with a customer activation program out in Times Square, Elon Musk and Solar City hosting an event there. We continue to invest in this space, bring new programming, CNBC's, Bloomberg, CNN there, to create a unique experience for our clients and potential clients. And all of these things feed off one another. You'll see it from the content to what's coming through the market site, to our sponsorship of the CNBC Disruptors 50 campaign, right to our lead generation, and all of those things in our social channels have a way of just feeding off one another and creating a truly powerful brand platform for us. In the last, we talked about this, is to create a vision. We have a vision for NASDAQ, which you'll see a bit in this video.
We have a very broad base of clients. They cover 95% of the Fortune 500 and 98% of the S&P 500. They rely on us as a partner to meet their ambitions as either public or private companies. We look at the challenges that those companies have in communicating with their investors, managing their board. We have PR services that allow the companies to look at how they communicate with the public. We also have directors' desks, which is essentially a governance tool allowing the company to communicate with their board, whether you're a small private company all the way up until you're a very large public company. Our investor relations services, for instance, they really are a holistic solution using technology and service to really meet all of their investor relations needs in a single interface. Advisory services is a solution that allows them to meet their ambitions as a public company in terms of targeting the right investors. We've already launched a mobile platform that allows the member to be able to look at what's happening with their stock, who's buying and selling, and any sort of intelligence we can give them about their peers and other analyst reports. We offer over 90 data solutions across 73 different countries. We have 2.5 million direct users of our data, but we also have billions of indirect users. Anyone who looks at Yahoo or Google, they all show our market data out to their clients. We are looking at how we can continue to evolve and develop in terms of the products that we offer to our clients. As they increase their ambition in life, we want to make sure we increase ours.
So year one was getting people to think a little bit differently, that there's something more to it. There's more business here at NASDAQ. There's another reason to consider us. Year two, we are moving into defining what that experience is within each of those businesses. And that is the year we are currently in. Year three, as we move forward, is NASDAQ as a financial technology company. And if you think about whether we are getting or driving revenue on a per trade basis, whether it is our technology running an exchange, what is our software solutions, at the heart of everything that we're doing is technology-based. And the reality is, whether it's blockchain or machine learning or starting a new energy market or starting a small market for private companies, all of those things foster advancement, innovation, and build on our technology base. And I think that's where you'll see us go in the year to come. So we touched on this briefly at the beginning, but I'd like to hit on a few highlights, because obviously I'm a big believer in brand and the power of it. So a sizable component of shareholder value is brand. A study by Interbrand and JP Morgan concluded on average, brands account for more than 1/3 of shareholder value. 3 years ago, NASDAQ was a $5 billion company. Today, it's just under a $10 billion company. Strong brands deliver great returns. Harvard, South Carolina, Interbrand, the best global brands tend to outperform the market and their peer group. NASDAQ has done both over the last 3 years. In addition, where we are in a duopoly with a competitor on IPOs. We've won 70% of IPOs. It's probably just north of that, 73% of IPOs in the past year. The numbers haven't been that high in the last decade plus. The company just experienced its best top-line revenue growth quarter in 2 years. Brand value heavily weighted by investors. So respondents ascribe significantly more market value to reputation than they do necessarily to other investing factors. As I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, NASDAQ 3 years ago traded at a 40% discount to the S&P, and today it trades at a premium. The long arc of recovery. On average, companies should expect a recovery from a negative reputational event to take 3 to 4 years. We are close to the end of that as we speak. And probably more near and dear to your heart is, what does this all mean for marketing? So when we look at all the different things that we touched, whether it's lead generation, design value, we have a digital revenue generating items in our business, public relations. In the last year, we were able to generate an 80% return on what the company invested in marketing communications. So by no means are we finished with this journey. We have a long way to go, but exceptionally excited about the future. Thank you. So I was told we were not going to take Q&A, but I'm happy to chat with anybody, either over cocktails, preferably, or after this session.
Sure, you did answer earlier, so if anybody does have a question or two, we could probably, can we get the house lights up? We have a couple minutes. Anybody follow-up question for Jeremy while we have him, before you want to grab him for cocktails? Sure.
You're talking a lot about brand. At what point in the process did you kind of integrate brand and content marketing? Or was that a challenge?
Would you mind repeating that too?
Sure. We talked a lot about brand, and so he said, at what point did we integrate brand and content marketing? And did you say, was it a challenge?
Yeah.
Yeah. So not out of the gate. We had a lot of work to do to get the content organized in a way that we understood what was flowing through the organization and what was coming out of the organization. We had lead generation process people to get through and work through. So I would say probably in a 3-year journey, it was 18 months in before we were able to get that all aligned and organized. And I'm a big believer too, you're never done with that process, sort of like the web. So that journey continues. Yep. Yep. Great question. So the question was, the 80% of the traffic that's coming through the Market Insight blog and going to the website, was that old content or new? It was a mix of both, and I would say probably 70% was new content. And it has become something now within the organization that people want to be a part of. They want it posted to. So people are now competing to get their content on that part of the website, and that's exciting. So, and we did not add net new people for that. I think, to be honest, we just got our processes sorted and worked out and captured the content that was moving through the organization.
One more question?
Yep.
What was the seminal event that drove the organization to change the brand or update the brand? And how did you get agreement around that?
I didn't hear the last part. How did I get what? Oh. Yep. Yep. Good question. So there is nothing like a crisis to catalyze an organization to make change. And we had a CEO who was very open and willing to hearing new ideas about directionally where marketing and the brand and things like that needed to go. So that was part of the catalyst. But to be honest with you, I wanted to change the brand the minute I walked into the company. I just knew it couldn't be the first thing that we did. We had other issues to fix. And when the client research came back, that was another catalyst to say, we need people to start thinking about this company a little bit differently than they have. And then the socialization process is as Tyr, and you highlighted this, is the most exhausting and painful to go through, to get a leadership team aligned around a look, a feel, and a direction is an exceptionally challenging proposition. But I would say this, I think the mistake many people make in that process is casting a net way too wide. At the end of the day, there has to be an exceptionally small group of people that are decision makers. Everyone can have an opinion, and we will hear those opinions, and we will modify and adjust as we go, but there's got to be a small group of decision makers, and if you can define that group, you're in a really good spot.
All right, I think we're going to wrap up. Thank you very much.
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.